This is Seth David for the Sleater Group, bringing to you another special screencast. This time we're talking about how to integrate PayPal into QuickBooks. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us at Sleater Group on Twitter. How to integrate PayPal into QuickBooks? That is the question. Unfortunately, there's still no easy way. No matter how you slice it, you're going to have to go through a few steps before you can get PayPal transactions imported into QuickBooks. Of course, PayPal claims to have an integration, but they use that IIF file format, which those of us who have experience with this know that's no way to integrate anything into QuickBooks. So we don't do it. When I see IIF, I run away. I run as fast as I can. I run as far as I can. Then I start looking for other ways to import that same data into QuickBooks, which is what I've had to do with PayPal. PayPal happens to be my processor of choice for credit card processing. There are a number of reasons for this, but probably the biggest one in terms of cost is PayPal is the only merchant processing solution that I'm aware of on this entire planet that is straightforward. It's just a straight, you pay this %. Now, when you get up into higher dollar volume transactions, yes, they do withhold money. That's easy to deal with. It's like any other withholding. You account for it as a withholding, as an asset, a receivable, and then when it gets released, you close out the receivable and add it to your bank account. It's pretty simple, especially if you're an accountant. So, how do we integrate PayPal transactions into QuickBooks? There are a couple of ways and a couple of things I want to show you. First of all, I'm going to show you in some kind of detail how I do it. And I do it manually by exporting to Excel, cutting up the Excel sheet, and then posting sales receipts into my QuickBooks file. And it sounds like it's going to look like a lot of work, but it really isn't. I can generally, if I slack off and don't enter my PayPal stuff for a whole month, I can still get it done inside of a single day, a month's worth. And I process a fair amount of transactions. The other way is going to be to export it to Excel just the same. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to post the link for you over here to Bay State Consulting's post on how to use their product, Transaction Pro Importer, to import PayPal transactions into QuickBooks using their program. Of course, this means you have to go out and buy their program. But if you do, this will definitely simplify your life, but not without a few steps, as you can see from their blog post here, that are going to be required in order to get Transaction Pro Importer to be able to sort of speak to both QuickBooks and the Excel export that you create from PayPal. And the first thing they're instructing you to do, as you can see in the screenshot on their blog post, is that you have to define the fields that get exported when you export to Excel. So I'll give you the link. You can come check out their blog post. In the meantime, I'm going to show you my way, and of course I'm going to have to blur out some information here. But I'm going to do my best to give you a good picture of what this looks like when I'm doing it. So, when I first log into PayPal and I look at my activity, here it is. And what I want to do is go to view all of my transactions, because initially it just kind of gives you a summary of the recent activity, and you can't really do any reporting on that. My personal feeling is that's a waste. Just take me right here. This is what I need. And I'm just going to, let's see, we're in October. I'm going to just pull up the entire month of September. And I don't use PayPal's default statements either, by the way. This is how I create a statement with PayPal, is I just run a query for a calendar month, and I reconcile to that. I reconcile to that balance. So once I've got this shown, what I can do is I can click here, download CSV. CSV is a comma-separated value file which can easily be opened in Excel, and I'm going to show you how. Now they're going to tell me that I need to wait for the log request to be processed, but it's usually very quick. So let me go ahead and bring that up. So PayPal sends me a link. I click on the link and it takes me over to this page. And if you're in the habit of doing this, mind the dates. I don't know why it does this, but it shows you the last few. I guess depending on how frequently you do it, it keeps them in the queue for a bit. But by default, it has the oldest one checked off. So make sure you check off the one you actually just ran today. I've made that mistake and gotten annoyed with myself more than a few times. So we check off the one I'm doing today, which is October 8th, 2013. And we click Download Log. And we're going to get this CSV file, and it's going to go into our Downloads folder. So let me just click here where it says Show in Folder. And normally, of course, what I do is I copy this out to the folder that I'm actually going to want to save it in, but since this is just for demo purposes, I will leave it in my downloads folder. Next, I have to open up Excel, and I have to browse to open this. I can double-click it, but I don't think that's going to give me the opportunity to open it the way... Oh, no, it does. If you double-click it, you will get all the data like this. Now, initially, this is an overwhelming wall of information that you might immediately think, oh my God, how am I supposed to make heads or tails of this? It's not that bad once you start taking a look at it. But before you do anything, I encourage you to first save it as an actual Excel file. Otherwise, you're working in a CSV format. So just file, save as, save it as a .xlsx. And I'm just going to rename this PayPal download, just so I know exactly what it is. Now, if you've ever watched my Excel videos, then you know I'm sort of a stickler for making things look pretty. It might seem, I don't know, frivolous to some of you, but to me it's important because especially if I'm going to spend time working in a file, then I would like to see, I'd like it to look pretty because I don't want to look at something that's not, you know, at least sort of pleasant to look at. And I don't find this pleasant to look at. So the first thing I'll do is do some quick little formatting things on this. Okay, we'll give a background shading, and then we'll change the font color a little bit. The other thing I'll do is I'll double-click while I've got everything selected. I'll double-click any right extreme of any column so it widens up all the columns exactly the way I need. Now I come over here and I've got my amounts. But one thing you'll want to know that you won't know unless you have somebody like me show you or you explore it yourself is, and I don't know why they do this, but the balance, the running balance, is way out to the right. So a control and a right arrow gets me all the way out to the right while I'm on the headers. So I highlight the whole column, control spacebar, control X to cut it, control left arrow gets me all the way back to the beginning, and then I can sort of move my cell pointer back over. So next to the net column, I'm in column J now, control spacebar, control shift plus will insert the cut cells right there. So I'm giving you some keyboard shortcut Excel tips to help make this process go a lot faster in the long run. Now I want these formatted properly for an amount. So I'm just going to highlight the whole range, and I did that by going down to the first line that's actually got a number, control shift down arrow. Let go of the control key, shift right arrow, right arrow, right arrow, so I can just highlight just a numeric portion of what's here. And I click on my comma formatting. That's my preference. But watch this. I'm not done. Then I'm going to hit let's go to, where is it? Font here. I click on that guy, and I want to do some additional formatting. And I think Excel is going to, there we go. Okay, so let's go to the fill. And what I'd like to do for the numbers here is make the default fill background black, which means I want the font to be white. And you'll see I do have a method to my madness here. Then I come over here, and for negative numbers, I want the number to be red, but without any parentheses or anything. Why? Because if I want to copy and paste this into QuickBooks, QuickBooks doesn't like the parentheses, nor does it like even a minus sign, or it'll take a minus sign, but it doesn't like the parentheses in the formatting. So this way it looks like a positive number, but I know that anything that's red is a negative number, and I can easily copy and paste that into QuickBooks. Now the next piece of information we're going to need is, and this goes to the question of, okay, if I'm using eBay, and I'm using, of course, PayPal to receive my payments on eBay, then what sort of matters here and what's important is to, if you can, name your items in eBay, name your products in a manner that's consistent with your item list in QuickBooks. Why? Because PayPal will actually download the item title. Now you'll see I don't use eBay. My titles are different. They have to do with my own products. And also, because I use a different shopping cart solution, I'm not using PayPal alone. I'm using something called eJunkie in connection with PayPal. So eJunkie actually has all of my items exactly as they're titled in my QuickBooks file. But the initial PayPal download doesn't. So there's an extra step here. I don't want to make this into a 20-minute video, but when you're using another shopping cart solution like I am, such as eJunkie, then what I'll do is I'll download the same period of transactions from eJunkie, and I can write a quick VLOOKUP that will look up the transaction ID. The transaction ID is going to be the same in both. It's one transaction ID per transaction no matter what. So I'll write a lookup here that says look up this transaction ID, look it up in my eJunkie export, and pull in my item title, and I'll copy and paste that down. That's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier when you're then going into QuickBooks to enter your sales receipts, which is what I'm doing next. So one thing I like to do is I like to take this whole column and move it over so that I have it right here next to my products that I've sold. Let's give a nice little bold face to the headers here. Let's go into my font settings one more time real quick. Let's go with a little dark fill there, and then font color white, bold is good. Let's make it a little bigger to 12. Okay, and we can center that. And then last but not least, for formatting, let's freeze the pane so I can always see what I'm looking at here. Now at this point, and as I said, assuming I've brought in my item title, what I will do, and I understand this is not the best solution in the world, it works for me because I'm quick with Excel and I'm also quick on the keyboard, so I can pretty quickly start entering these things in because, well, these are of course payments. You know, my Starbucks, I have the Starbucks app and it pulls off of my PayPal account. So if you want to make it really easy, actually, one thing you can do now is let's start sorting this data. So I'm going to highlight the whole range. Okay, let's make sure I've successfully highlighted everything. I will. And let's go to the Data tab and turn on the filters. This alone can give you a lot of good information, forgetting about QuickBooks, in terms of just being able to analyze using your filters here and your drop-downs. But what I want to do is I want to, and mind you, the balance here is not calculated, so you have to be a little careful about that. And notice my dates are in reverse chronological order from most recent. So we can fix that, again, by highlighting the whole range. Under the Data tab, sort, and I want to sort first by date, then I'm going to add a level, next by time in, or time rather, and that puts things in the right sort order. This is also just a personal little thing of mine that I prefer my dates to be formatted in double-digit format all the way through, just because when it's done that way, everything lines up very nicely. So I like that. It's a little kind of, well, I guess you could call it anal. Some people might call it that. I just call it organized. So what I would do now is I just, at this point, go into QuickBooks, pull up my PayPal register, and start entering transactions. Now keep in mind, this is a month's worth for me, and I am looking at about, in this case, 76 transactions. Sounds like a lot, and that's a typical month for me, probably. So, you know, again, I can get this done. Once I've got this set up, in a few hours I can enter this whole month, maybe even less than a few hours. But the tricky thing probably that we're talking about, because the question again was how do I integrate PayPal? I think we're talking specifically about sales transactions, right? So we're talking about positive amounts. Let's go here and let's just sort smallest to largest on the net. Because what that's going to do is it's going to put my sales transactions kind of at the bottom here. And, you know, so again, what I do is I've got my customer name here. I can copy and paste that into the customer field. And what I do is I make sure that for the customers that pay me through PayPal, that the customer name in QuickBooks exactly matches what's here, even if it's just in that initial customer payment line. Let me pull up a sample QuickBooks file so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's a sample QuickBooks file that I went ahead and created for the purposes of this video. And I'm going to show you how I can actually get this stuff entered very, very quickly. The first thing we want to do is I've established a button here that takes me right into the PayPal register. I've established a deposit that takes me right into the Make Deposit screen. And one button that takes me right into the, you know, my operating account, which I just call iBank for this purpose. The other thing we want to add on here is the Create Sales Receipts or Enter Sales Receipts button. So let's quickly add that up. I didn't do that earlier. So we'll get that up in there. And here's where we're going to start. So I'm going to show you once slowly and then a few times very quickly, just so you can see that, you know, going through it slowly, I'm going to do it so that you can see how it's done, see the whole process. Then I'm going to go through it for several transactions very quickly so that you can see how quick and easy it is to do. Bear in mind, I don't have any customers set up in this yet. So I'm actually going to be setting up the customers along the way, and you're going to see exactly how that's done because, let's face it, hopefully you have a ton of new customers every month who are buying from you online. So you're going to be faced with this. So let's get started. I'm going to use my Alt-Tab keys very heavily here to toggle back and forth between Excel and QuickBooks. Alt-Tab, right? Many of you probably know this, but for the sake of those who may not, I'm going to go through some of this stuff very slowly. And the whole key to this, the whole key to making this process fast is keeping your hands off the mouse and using the keyboard. That's what's going to make this process go very quickly. Now, I've sorted this by amount, which means items that are for the same amount, very likely the same item being sold over and over again, are going to get grouped together. So that's that's another little tip that'll help you speed up the process, because if you're entering the same item, then it goes faster. You just get all of the transactions for that item done in succession. So let's start with the first customer here. I'm going to copy the name, and of course this is going to be blurred out by the time you're watching this. Alt-Tab over to QuickBooks. I've already got the sales receipt up. Control-V to paste. It's a new customer. QuickBooks asks me to set it up, so I click Setup. And the reason why is I don't care about the address information for every customer, but I do want their email for marketing and other purposes. So I'm going to come over, and their email is right here. It comes through in the download this way. So I can come over here, copy the email, paste it in, done. Now, the date, Control left arrow gets me all the way over to the first column, which is a date. Alt-Tab, paste in the date. Okay, you can put in the payment method if that matters to you. So this one happened to be a sale for my School of Bookkeeping. So I'm going to just create that item real quick in here, because again, this is brand new. This is a brand new company file. So we'll just call it merchandise sales for now, even though that's not what it is. And I'm going to put the gross sale amount in here, even though there's fees taken out. Oop, not in the quantity. I'm going to put the gross sales. It says I've changed the amount. I'm going to say don't display this message. Okay, save and close. Now, next step, I got to make my deposit, right? Deposit's not going into iBank, it's going into PayPal. Okay, the date is the same date. What I like, one of the other things I like about PayPal is that everything gets funded separately. Okay, now the thing that should have happened is my sales receipt should have come up. I ignored it before. So we select this, I bring in my sales receipt. Now I have to deal with the fee. The fee goes to PayPal, so I set PayPal up as a vendor. This is credit card processing fees. Of course, I only have to set this up once. And I like to call this cost of goods sold. You can argue with me and yell at me and tell me I don't know what I'm doing, but I like to call it cost of goods sold for the very simple reason that I want to show it as a direct cost against the income that I've generated. I'm going to tab over to this key, this field. I'm going to put a minus sign. Alt-Tab back over to Excel. Right arrow, grab the fee that's in red. This is why I formatted it, to show it as though it's a positive number. Control-C, Alt-Tab, Control-V. My net sale is $141.55. Alt-Tab back over to the spreadsheet. $141.55 is a match. Save and close. And now it's in my PayPal account. So I went through that one kind of fast. So I'm going to go through the next one very slowly. I'm going to grab this customer. And by the way, of course, since I'm not going in order, it becomes critically important to mark these somehow so that I know I've entered them. Right? Now I go to the next one. Again, copy the customer name. Enter the sales receipt. Grabbing my mouse for that purpose. Although I could actually, I forget sometimes the actual, excuse me, it's S for the sales receipt. So Alt-U-S gets me the sales receipt. Control-V to paste the customer name in. Tab. Setup, I just want the email address. Alt-Tab over to Excel, right arrow over to the email address. Also, you may have noticed this before. I'm not just pressing Control-C here to copy it. I'm actually going right into the formula and copying it from there. Why? Because oftentimes if I just go to copy, the email address like this. If I just copy the whole cell, it can pick up null values and things that I don't want. So just to be on the safe side, I grab my mouse at this point, Control C to copy, Escape to get me out of Excel's edit mode so that I'm not so that I'm not stuck in edit mode when I come back to the spreadsheet, so I can't screw things up. So again, I just come in here with the mouse, Control C. The other way, so I don't have to touch the mouse, is as I was using my right keyboard arrow, I get over to the email, F2 puts me right at the end, Shift Home highlights the whole thing, Control C, and I can hit Enter. I'm not changing anything. Then Alt Tab back over to QuickBooks, Tab key all the way over to the email, Control V, tab once more to make sure that took, and then Enter. Enter finishes the entry for that portion. Now it wants the date, Control left arrow gets me to the date, Control C, Control V to paste. Let me make sure I was on the right line. I was not. So I come back there, I grab that date, paste the dates. I don't have to worry about picking up null values because they're so specific that QuickBooks won't let me put something in that doesn't belong there. And again, I know this was another school of bookkeeping. I know my price was $147, and then I'm going to say save and close. Alt B is in banking, D is in deposits. Alt BD. Alt A selects all. There's only one thing to select, and if I'm doing this and keeping current with it, then that should always be the case. Enter to complete that portion. We're depositing it into PayPal. The deposit date should be consistent. Then down and over here, under receive from is PayPal. Now it comes up. Credit. Once I type CRE, that comes up. Tab over, minus sign. Alt tab over to Excel. Right arrow. Grab it. It's the same amount. Save and close. Let's do it again. Alt U and S for the sales receipt. Come over here. Let's mark this one. Entered. Okay. Let's get this guy going. Okay. Control V to paste him in. Setup. Tab over to the email address. Alt tab over to Excel. Right arrow. F2. Shift home. Control C. Enter. Up arrow all the way to the left because I know I'm going to need to come back and get that date in a minute. Control V. Alt tab over to QuickBooks. Control V to paste the email in. Tab once to make sure that's complete. Hit enter. Over to the date. Alt tab. Grab the date. Control C. Alt tab again. Control V as in Victor to paste. The item. Same thing. Put in the amount. Alt A to save and close. Then Alt B, D to make deposits. Alt A to select all. Enter. Tab over. Make sure the date's consistent. It is. Down here I tab over. CRE. Done. Tab over. Minus sign. Over here, Control C, Alt tab, Control V. Done. See how quickly this starts to go? You can actually do this, and you can get a lot of transactions entered in very short order. Let's do one more. Now I'm going to do it fast. I'm not going to talk through it. I'm just going to do it. So I get the customer, Alt U, S, paste it in, setup, tabbing over to the email, Alt tab over here. I guess I can talk through it and still do it pretty fast. Copy the email address in, go there, make sure my date's right. Okay, item was the same. Alt A, come over here. We're going to need that fee. Get that in. Done. See how quick that is? If you get used to the keyboard shortcuts, it might be slower at first, but it's worthwhile. Alright, let's get another one. I like having the PayPal register open as I'm entering these. It just gives me a sense of accomplishment, I guess, when I'm doing it. Plus, I can also, as I'm going, confirm that the correct net amount came in. So I'm going to do one more. And then I'm going to leave it for you to all comment below. Getting the information, pasting it in. What's the item? Same thing. Make deposits. Get that fee in there. Make sure it's negative. Boom. That's it, my friends. That's how you can manually enter your PayPal transactions into QuickBooks, and after cutting up the Excel the right way. And of course, once you're done, what you're going to want to do is come back over here, sort everything by date and then time, and make sure that your running balance agrees to what you have in QuickBooks. That's all, folks. The other way, like I said at the beginning, and just to remind you, is to come over here to the Transaction Pro Importer website. If you do a Google search for Transaction Pro Importer PayPal, you'll find this blog post for sure. But I'll also provide the link, of course, wherever you're watching this video, and if you're reading it on the blog. So check out their product. Theirs is another way that'll save you some time. You're still going to have to do the export, and then you'll want to get your item list in there. Depending on whether or not your shopping cart will dump that into PayPal properly. One way or the other, you want to make sure your items are in there, because then Transaction Pro is going to map everything to your items based on how your items are set up in QuickBooks. That's going to be critical. So post your comments and questions below. We'd love to hear back from you and find out more about what you're thinking. Like I said, I know it's not the ideal. The ideal solution, let's face it, would be to be able to click a button and have the information go from PayPal right into QuickBooks. Unfortunately, that option is not available yet to my knowledge. I have a few vendors who have reached out to me claiming they have the solution. I haven't had a chance to evaluate any of them yet. As soon as I do, you'll be hearing from me. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.